Meet Giffen, James Giffen. Perhaps he's not as handsome as the 007, but he's just as elusive. For several years, James Giffen held a virtual monopoly on contracts with foreign investors on behalf of the entire Kazakhstan. Giffen was a personal advisor to President Nazarbayev. He was the one holding the key to Tengiz, Kashagan and Karachaganak, the oil Klondike of the 21st century. Robert Bayer, an ex-CIA agent and retired spy, is now writing books and memoirs. He could not pass on the story of James Giffen and used it as a base for his bestseller, See No Evil, which was later adopted as Syriana for the big screen. After that, the whole world knew about Mr. Kazakhstan, a man who opened doors to the Central Asian country for any Western company.
He played Kazakh politics and business, which involves bribery. I mean, there's no question about it. I think the evidence against him is fairly clear.
In 2003, these games first caught the attention of the Swiss prosecutor's office and later the United States. The ensuing grand corruption scandal involved the president of Kazakhstan and several other top officials. Nevertheless, Giffen managed to come out unscathed. In November 2010, an American court declared James Giffen as secret agent who acted in Kazakhstan in the interests of the United States. Once again, Kazakhstan appeared in a negative light since the country's top officials emerged as partners of James Giffen, a CIA agent. Obviously, when he met with officials, he never introduced himself as James Bond Giffen. Giffen came into view in the USSR at the time when American businessmen had little cooperation with Soviet partners and connections were vital. Soviet leadership hoped to use Giffen to get US equipment and technology. Stanislav Menshikov, who was at the time an advisor in the International Department of Communist Party's Central Committee, recalls that Giffen easily established contacts with the top political leaders. It took him just a couple of days to set up my meeting with the former US President Richard Nixon. Giffen was a frequent guest in Moscow, being especially interested in the recently launched development of oil fields in the northern Caspian Sea. This interest determined Giffen's key meeting with Nazarbayev in Moscow. I witnessed many of the meetings. Nazarbayev frequently visited Moscow, and at the time Giffen's office was in the Hammer International Trade Center. I think that is where we first met, when together with my ex-wife, Nazarbayev's daughter, I was introduced to James Giffen. Giffen literally spent days and nights near the president, and sometimes me, as I was the chairman of the Supreme Council. But not only Giffen sought partnership with Nazarbayev at the time. Jack Greenberg, an American oil extractor from Colorado, also offered his services to the first secretary of Kazakhstan's Communist Party. In late 80s, he found out about Caspian oil fields and came to a conclusion that there is a major deposit 5,000 meters deep in the northeastern part of the Caspian Sea.
I saw this giant reef right here in black and white. And I could not believe it. It was absolutely giant. To give you a post-mortem, today Kashagan is this. And my interpretation of the giant reef is superimposed right on it. So I was right there, bullseye, predicted Kashagan.
Jack Greenberg and Kazakh leadership entered a very close, almost friendly relationship, with the American actively seeking partners for Nazarbayev among major players, and then introducing them directly to the leader of the Soviet Republic. However, the partnership between Nazarbayev and Greenberg eventually fell through. One of the reasons was the reluctance of the oil extractor to accept conditions of the Kazakh administration. I was in Caracas, Venezuela, together with a Kazakh delegation led by Nazarbayev, where he simply fell in love with this pair of nice shoes that cost $260. I made a call to my lawyer in Denver to make sure I could buy these shoes for President Nazarbayev, who actually knew about this call. The lawyer told me I could make any gift costing less than $1,000. That's our law. Thus, Nazarbayev knew that I would never give or set up bribes. Unlike Greenberg, who never worked in the USSR, James Giffen understood very well how to do business with Soviet officials. Just like many American businessmen I met over the years, Giffen had a custom of giving gifts. I recall once he brought me these huge Moody's catalogs costing around $1,000. Also, I did ask for them. The willingness to accept gifts like these came at quite a price for several members of the Soviet Trade Department. The deputy of the Foreign Trade Minister of the USSR, Vladimir Sushkov, ended up in prison in 1986 for kickbacks received for contracts with foreign companies. Nevertheless, the new age promised new perspectives and presented new opportunities. At that time, Nazarbayev didn't consider the possibility of Kazakhstan becoming an independent state. His main goal was to become one of the leaders of the big USSR, an objective he almost achieved. Many participants of the political process back in 1991 recall that Nazarbayev dreamt of becoming the Prime Minister of the Soviet Union and even had a prior agreement on the matter with Mikhail Gorbachev. The events, however, unfolded too quickly, and Nazarbayev had to settle for the president of the country. He had no program for the creation of market society in Kazakhstan and only used his knowledge of Soviet textbooks on political economy, which said that in capitalism, everything is solved with money that can be later converted to power and eventually return as more money. However, to launch this lucrative circulation of monetary and power resources, Nazarbayev needed people capable of giving him access to the market of shady deals. James Giffen appeared to be the man Nazarbayev was looking for. To leave these issues for himself, Nazarbayev disbanded 2 convocations of the Supreme Council and actually usurped all the political power. For his part, Nazarbayev's partner and personal advisor James Giffen secured the payment of bribes by oil companies, says Jack Greenberg.
Is he convinced the various oil companies that I was talking to that he, Giffen, can deliver and I cannot deliver. And he said, if each one of the companies would pay $40 million, then he can deliver Kashagan. And I know that every company paid $40 million, and a good portion of the $40 million Giffen put in his pocket.
According to Greenberg's calculations, Western companies paid a total of $280 million, a nice bonus for the leadership of Kazakhstan. This is why Giffen was so important. After all, Americans were ready to compete for Kazakh deposits on fair conditions, even without a mediator. Tomorrow or even today, you can be approached by 10 global companies, not some shady firms from offshore zones, but the real deal, like Mobil, Chevron, Royal Dutch, British Gas, British Petroleum, Egypt, etc. If you can give them equal conditions, they will be happy to compete, and the one who pays more will win. That's it. There's no need for Giffen. Giffen is needed only for shady deals that we see emerging now. These shady deals led to a criminal case instigated by the New York Attorney's Office, charging Giffen with violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. The prosecution's evidence pointed to Giffen's guilt and indicated that the money from oil deals ended up on the accounts controlled by the president of Kazakhstan. On May 14, 2004, Nazarbayev had a live conference with the population where he said he didn't know Giffen. A week later, all newspapers published photos where Nazarbayev's family posed together with Giffen. Back then, no one doubted that soon Giffen will be imprisoned for a long time. This, however, didn't happen. The trial continued for years, and it became apparent that, apart from corruption, the case also has a substantial political component. Before long, it was revealed that Giffen was an important source of political information for the US leadership.
He became the de facto ambassador. What he said about Kazakhstan was more important to the Secretary of State than what our ambassador had to say. He had contacts across the government. He had easy access to the president.
Not only Giffen had access to President Nazarbayev, the political advisor was also granted Kazakh citizenship and special perks. Nazarbayev personally gave James Giffen a personal official car from the president's fleet and also provided him with security from the president's security service. Giffen had very good ties with the leadership of the National Security Committee. Obviously, in this situation, Giffin's contacts with Washington resembled direct espionage. Nevertheless, Giffen was very comfortable with this, since both of his employers were well aware of his double role. It is known that Russian secret services warned Nazarbayev about Giffen being a double agent. Nazarbayev's amazing tolerance towards Giffen is easily explainable. The boss, that is how Giffen called Nazarbayev, and his advisor, both shared common interests in money. Kazakhstan needed money and independence, including from Russia, in its efforts to develop the oil fields. That is why all the emotions were left behind. Business was more important than anything else. In 2004, when Tasmagambetov appeared on the scene, there was a revelation that Nazarbayev transferred $1.1 billion to secret accounts abroad. There could be many more billions like that.
Giffen was arrested in 2003, trying to go to Kazakhstan and escape from the United States. He was arrested in Newark Airport, and he is on a bond that he posted, a $10 million bond. Now, this is a salesman who never had any money. He may have made $50,000 or $100,000 a year. Suddenly he had $10 million to post cash as a bond. Where did he get it?
Now, after the charges were dropped, Giffen admits it was Kazakh government that helped him cover the legal costs. The defense team was indeed talented and professional. Giffen's lawyers proclaimed him an agent of state importance. Without inside knowledge, it is hard to say what Giffen had access to. However, our state secrets are not guarded that well anyway. $100 can buy a state secret. The defense strategy was initially dismissed as a joke. Its genius was appreciated later when it appeared effective for protracting the trial. In addition, the details of the agent's work still had to be shared with the press. It was revealed it was Giffen who reported about the delivery of military planes from Kazakhstan to North Korea in 1999. This even led to a dismissal of the defense minister.
At certain times during his period in Kazakhstan, he was too. There were certain incidents that happened, and he was a conduit of, for example, when there was the sale of MiG fighters to North Korea. This information came from Giffen.
Nevertheless, the final verdict and subsequent speech of the judge William Pauly surprised everyone, including seasoned agents like Robert Pryor.
I don't understand why the court didn't sentence him for the violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. It was clear information he was giving, evidence that he was giving information to.
Actually, there could be nothing remarkable about the matter. The judge could have been privately shown documents that present more than enough convincing evidence in Giffen's favor, proving that he indeed worked for the CIA under the cover of the president. It is clear that the prosecutor's office or other law enforcement agencies will never talk about it. The case is what the leadership of our country used to call an internal affair of the United States that has nothing to do with Kazakhstan. That is why no officials will ever comment on the matter. Nazarbayev should be tried in accordance with Kazakh laws, but recently the parliament passed a number of amendments to the current legislation, and now Nazarbayev is virtually untouchable, even after his death. The public consciousness and public opinion appear to be somewhat forgotten in Kazakhstan. In the meantime, Giffen feels more than confident. The declassified agent now gladly makes public statements. One of them was published by Bloomberg. Apparently, Nazarbayev's ex-advisor intends to return to Kazakhstan to tackle the issues of energy policy. He is really concerned with the fate of Kashagan. The extraction of oil there is constantly delayed, and the estimated costs of $30 billion already skyrocketed past the $100 billion mark. Why would Giffen take this risk right after the end of his litigations? Perhaps Kazakh authorities are already thinking about holding a new competition on Kashagan using old ploys. This way, Superkhan will need James Giffen again to continue selling off Kazakhstan.